Scrutiny Management Board. My name is Councillor Philip Roberts. I am the Chairman of this board. Councillor Kane Parkinson, Vice Chairman of the board, is also in attendance. Can I remind you that the audio-visual feed of this formal public meeting is being broadcast live via the County Council's website, and all your comments will remain accessible online as the meeting recording remains on the Council's website. And with this in mind, I would like to welcome members of the public and press watching this live. Welcome to the following Executive Councillors and Executive Councillors who are attending our meeting today. Councillor Sean Matthews, Leader of the Council. Councillor Rob Gibson, Deputy Leader of the Council and Executive Councillor for Community Engagement. And Councillor Tom Catton, Executive Councillor for Resources. Welcome to the following members of the corporate leadership team who are present today. Andrew Crookham, Deputy Chief Executive and Executive Director for Resources. Karen Kassar, Assistant Director Highways, attending on behalf of Andy Gutherson, Executive Director of Place. Debbie Barnes, OBE, Chief Executive, to join us later during the meeting. There was no fire drill planned this morning. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, we need to leave the chamber and exit the building via the front doors and congregate in the car park in front of the building, where we will wait for further instructions. Can I remind everyone to ensure their mobiles, laptops and tablets are on silent for the duration of the meeting. The hearing loop is now activated. Requests to speak will be collated by the Vice Chairman. If you wish to speak during the meeting, can you please raise your hand and the Vice Chairman will make a note. We will try to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to ask questions and make contributions. Therefore, I would appreciate that you indicate early when you wish to speak. We will now move on to the formal agenda of this meeting. Apologies for absence. Emily, do we have any apologies?
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies from Paul Brewster, Emile van der Zee, Councillor Dilks, and we will have Councillor Overton as a replacement, and Councillor French, and we have Councillor Beecham as a replacement.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I've had a message from Councillor Finlay. He's broken down on the way here. Would like to submit his apologies. He's not here as yet. You're looking around. I didn't see it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Gibson. I'm sure he'll join us at some point. Members of the board are reminded that you only need to declare any relevant interests which have not been declared on the declaration of pecuniary interest form. Do any members wish to declare an interest? No. Minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of October 2025. This is to confirm and sign the minutes from the last meeting of the board on the 30th of October as a correct record. These can be found on pages 5 to 10 of the agenda pack. Can I have a proposer? Councillor Woodruff. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Collier. Thank you. Excellent. Right. Item number 4. Sorry, everybody in favour of the minutes? Agreeing with the minutes? Those against? Any abstentions? No. Excellent. Announcements by the Chairman, Executive Councillors and Chief Officers. Do we have any announcements from the Chairman? I have no announcements today. Executive Councillor announcements. Do we have any announcements from? Nothing. Councillor Gibson, Councillor Catton. Chief Officer announcements. No. Excellent. Item number 5, consideration of any call-ins. Emily, are there any call-ins to consider?
No, none received.
Consideration of any councillor call for action.
None received.
Excellent. Formal agenda. Item number 7. Review of financial performance 2025 to 26 quarter 2. This pre-decision scrutiny report can be found between pages 11 and 58 of the agenda pack. The report to the executive outlines the council's financial performance in the second quarter of 25 to 26. The executive is due to consider the report for a decision on the 2nd of December. This report will be presented by Michelle Grady, Assistant Director of Finance. Also present as a support are Adam Hopley, Strategic Financial Lead.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Okay.
Wait.
Is that right at the front? As you said, we're asking the board to consider the report that will be with the Executive on the 2nd December, which takes our financial position halfway through the year up to the 30th of September. In terms of our revenue budget monitoring and our revenue forecast, the table 1 on page 15 shows a forecast of the overall position for the 25-6 current financial year, which is showing an underspend of 6.4 million on our services and our general fund, which is an improvement from Q1. But it is worth noting that although this is an improved position, this has assumed the use and the uncommitted element of the contingency and some use of temporary resources. And it's worth noting that the service lines continue to show pressures as previously reported, especially in areas like social care, which are detailed and included in Appendix A from page 24. Table 1 also highlights the continued forecasting of an overspend on our DSG budget, dedicated schools grant budget, which has risen to 25 million, driven by pressures on the high needs block, which has also been previously reported. This position will be ring-fenced as a deficit position as per the government statutory override, but clearly is a concerning position for us. The capital budget, so page 2, table 2 on page 17 provides an update to our capital programme, which has planned for £294 million of investment in the current year, which will now include the balances that have been carried forward from the last financial year. The table also sets out the external funding and borrowing requirement for the programme. The overall spend forecast shows some underspending on the programme of a net 13 million, which includes an underspend of the capital contingency that's built into the programme. It also shows an increase in the use of external funding available and some slippage in the borrowing requirement that the programme was set out to at the beginning of the year. Most of these variances reflect slippage in the timing of the programme, as well as some pressures in the future years of some of the major schemes in the programme. The report specifically seeks out the approval of the Executive to reallocate budget from other budgets to the IT budget within resources, and that's to enact a decision made by Executive in June in approving the contract for the IT provision and the new contract provider. The report also provides some updates on the financial planning and future funding process that we've been going through. Q1 provided an update in the process that we're going through in terms of looking for savings, and also Q2 now provides an update on some of the consultation that's been going on with government, which we're hoping to get a policy statement for today, and hopefully will give us some indication to support our future financial planning process. The report also provides an update on our reserves position and the development fund specifically within that. So happy to take any questions or any comments from OSMB to take forward to Executive.
Thank you, Michelle. I'd like to invite members of the board to comment and ask any further questions. Councillor Parkinson, do we have any speakers?
Yeah, Councillor Hills,
Councillor Davies. Would you like to begin?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Page 33, highways. I note the underspend, but also, perhaps more concerningly, is the cancellation. So I'm not sure I'm reading it right, so I'd be grateful for some clarification. It would seem that there's an underspend of £3.469 million within the highways budget. In order to overspend, you're cancelling £1.3 million worth of schemes. I'm not sure, I understand the logic of that, because I don't see how a cancellation of 1.3 spend would wipe out the underspend. But also, can we have a detailed list of what those schemes are that aren't now going to happen, and an understanding of the rationale as to why they've been cancelled, please?
So I can maybe start with that, and maybe Karen can provide some extra details as we go on. So the overall position in highways is an underspend, as you've highlighted, and the majority of that overspend is coming from the TRO, additional income that haven't been budgeted for In terms of the highways maintenance programme, we've needed to do more reactive maintenance, and for the highways maintenance programme to be managed within its overall total, that's had to push back some of the planned maintenance work. So hopefully Karen can provide a bit more information on that, if that makes sense. Is that okay?
Could I, just before we get into the detail, can I come back on that? I'm not sure that does make sense. Unless you're saying that you're breaking up the budget into constituent parts and managing internal budgets that you're not listing on here, the explanation as written in the report, Mr. Chairman, is different to what you've just given. So I think there's an inconsistency there. And also, you used the phrase verbally push back, the report says cancel. So I think it's really important, because there will be communities around the county who will be expecting, we'll all have been on parish walks and stood there, and we will have said off that list of the highways programme, don't worry, parish council chairman, you can put your pitchfork down, it's coming next May. This tells us that those things now not have been pushed back, but have been cancelled. So I think we need to be really clear about what's actually happening here. Please, Mr. Chairman.
So in terms of the overall management, the highways maintenance programme is overspending in the reactive maintenance area, which means that planned maintenance has either been pushed back or cancelled, and I'll let Karen confirm on that. The overall position for the Place Directorate is a balanced position, and some of the underspends on the TRO income, not the highways maintenance issue, but the TRO income is supporting that overall position for Place.
Okay, good morning, Councillor Davis. If I look at the two questions there, first in relation to the income that has been generated through the temporary traffic regulation orders, that has, as Michelle has just alluded to there, been used to balance, so we balance across Place. So we are operating as one service area, delivering the services, and how we then make sure that our budget balances across Place. So that's how we've looked at from the income perspective. From the actual highway service perspective, as with other senior officers across the authority, we are required to make sure that we operate within our budget envelope and make sure that we balance. What we have done, I suppose, in terms of the language, we have cancelled some schemes that were due to take place in this financial year and moved it forward into next financial year. So the overspend that we have had, the pressures, is through the emergency works, through the drought damaged roads. We have then had to redirect funds, the maintenance funds, to make sure that we still continue to deliver our service, our repairs, our response, etc. But we've just pushed back some schemes to make sure that we come in on budget. We're not doing an overspend. We will be doing those schemes. We have communicated with the members to say the two main schemes, but we've pushed back some of the less important maintenance schemes to make sure that we're making the drought damaged roads safe and usable.
If I may come back, Mr. Chairman.
That's fine. Yeah.
With greatest respect, I don't think that response stacks up when you look at the numbers, and it's certainly not what is in the report. But I would be grateful at a later date in writing a list of those schemes, when they were planned for and when they're now going to happen. That would be very helpful, please, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Is that possible, Karen? Because I think most of us would be interested to know which ones are going to be going ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll provide that for you.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, the overall view that we are projecting a 6.4 million underspend sounds very encouraging. And I'm afraid when you go into the appendices, and I know this is only halfway through the year, I feel there is a concern there, because when you actually look at the detail, putting aside the high needs block and the statutory override, which probably could be 25, 30 million pounds. So park that, even though it is a serious issue and something which is an increasing concern to all councils. On top of that, children are projecting a £5 million overspend. Adults are projecting a £2 million overspend. So services overall on their day-to-day spending are currently projecting 11 million overspend. £11 million. And the reason the council is not overspending generally, because there's been both within departments and corporately, that is being covered. So, for example, in adults, the forecast number of clients was overestimated, so they're saying there's fewer clients coming forward now. In terms of the income, they're now saying, oh, we've got more income, so they can offset that. The energy, there's obviously a bonus as well, because the energy costs corporately are not as high as anticipated. And indeed, the pay levels are, again, not as high as predicted. Using the contingency of 8 million, but also using £7 million of other stuff. So I suppose my concern is that, and I suppose it's to the current Director of Resources, have you got Directorate spending under control? Because these growths will be there next year, and at the moment, to put it in plain English, one-off money is being used to plug the gap, to give you your underspend. But those pressures, if they're not addressed or clamped down on, they'll be there next year. And the poor old, my successor as chairman of Portfolio for Finance will have a big problem on his hands. So are you confident that the departments are actually controlling their budgets adequately? I mean, we've had a response from Place there, which frankly, I still don't understand, because they're projecting an underspend, and then they're saying, oh no, we've already spent it. So little alarm bells are beginning to ring, and I hope that you can reassure us that things are under control.
Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Hill. So yeah, I guess it is a challenging year. I'd say out the front. Typically we'll always see one or two areas of the council that run a bit hot in terms of their demand, particularly their demand-led areas. And as you acknowledge, it's probably fair to say that both adults and children are experiencing some challenges this year in terms of that demand. I think in terms of the heart of your point, have we got a grip? Yes, we have, because we do report. Obviously we bring this report quarterly into the democratic space. We are managing finances on a monthly basis at corporate leadership team level. Where areas do overspend, we do put additional support in. So we've got additional support in adults at the moment in terms of their particular area that they're facing challenging on in terms of the mental health budget. Ditto at a management level with the children's services team as well, in terms of particularly the children in care numbers that are creating challenges. And there are all reasonable reasons for those. Now, as we've had for many years, as I say, we will always have areas that do go over budget and some areas that do go under budget. And I think the key bit is that we've got enough of a holistic view that we can manage the overall council's budget within its place and then create fixes to those areas that are experiencing challenges, which is what we are doing at the moment. And the budget that will come through in January, February time will account for those. We clearly can't turn children away, and if we haven't got local placement sufficiency, we need to create that, and that takes time. And they're things that I think you've seen before when you were in power. So if that's the reassurance that I can provide, and we're on it. So,
Councillor Hill.
Yeah, 11 million I don't think is my definition. Overspend is my definition of grip. And the other thing, interestingly, that the previous meeting, Children's Services were saying that we can only find half of our required savings, which was £500,000. Suddenly, this meeting, they've suddenly found £500,000. So how have they managed that so quickly?
I'll start the question and then hand over to Joe. So typically how it works, Q1 is always a difficult forecast because it's very early on in the year. We're still getting to grips with that other 9 months that we're trying to forecast for. And by the time we get to Q2, we can start to take a really sort of a more concrete view on where we think we'll be outturning. We can also, which is why we've brought forward the movement of budget request at this point in time. We're also in a view of working out where we might have, other funds such as grants that we might be able to apply to certain types of spend, which is one of the processes that we've been through in this report, particularly around the public health grant and associated expenditures to the Homes for Ukraine grant. So they are some of the things that we've started to deploy in. But if Joe's happy to come in and provide a bit more specific detail on that, I'd be grateful. So.
No problem. Yeah, as Andrew's already said, in terms of use of one-off monies, we've been able to do that. But I think in terms of where we are now, in terms of the Children in Care Transformation Programme, we are feeling more confident around reducing some of the cost pressures in relation to children in care. Andrew's already mentioned there is a national issue around placements for children, and we're doing a number of things in Lincolnshire to try and improve our picture, which we will hopefully start to see the benefit from. So we are having a bespoke fostering service that we're currently looking to recruit foster carers for an enhanced level of support for children and young people, where at the moment we're having to utilise the private market for residential placements, which is not what we want for those children, nor at the cost that we want, because there are issues in the market. We're also doing some work in commissioning around ensuring that we are able to source placements that have the right level of need for children at the right cost, and we're also looking at that regionally. And in addition, we have just launched a reunification team, which is a specialist service made up of social workers and early help workers that will work to support children returning from care back to their families with an enhanced level of support in place. So we hope those measures that are now happening will start to have the desired impact.
Thank you, Jo. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chair. Given the overspend of the 25 million and rising, what's your plan to stop this growing even further when the trend in EHC plans is still rising? Are we just going to ride the wave and hope the government keep giving us more money at all? Thank you.
Michelle.
I'll start. Anybody else can chip in if they'd like to. So there's a number of, so we are definitely at the tail end of this DSG overspend. If you talk to any of the other upper tier authorities around the country, there's many of them that are into the hundreds of millions already in terms of deficit. And this is a well-known issue. It's a well-known SEND issue, and the government are looking to introduce a bill, I believe, in the spring next year to kind of address some of this. In terms of what we've been doing in Lincolnshire, we've been investing in local places. We've invested in the team that review the EHCPs. We've invested in alternative provision places as well, and the Better Belongings paper has recently come through to introduce the next phase of that mitigations. So I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything. They're the mitigations we've currently got in place. But clearly it's a worrying position, but it's a national worrying position.
Thank you, Michelle. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you so much. On page 32, it talks about the waste position coming in about half as much as what was expected at the time. Can we have some clarification around the actual details of that? Because it talks about the wholesale energy prices reducing significantly. I know that most people here probably haven't realised that reality. So can I get some more information about what the actual reality is of that situation, because it doesn't make sense to me at the moment.
Sorry, just down to the...
Sorry, it's on page 32, right at the bottom. It's the last line on the waste position.
So one of the biggest elements of budget volatility, well, there are a number of very volatile elements of the waste contracts, mainly relating to the energy from waste site that is managed by FCC, the contract there. Big volatility around the waste that's produced and how that can fluctuate due to weather and all different elements that fluctuate, that create volatility around what we pay in terms of the waste that's being presented. But the biggest element that's coming through in this year is the income that we receive from the electricity that's sold through the waste. So as you could expect, as electricity prices go up, our yield from that grows as well. So whilst we've been paying increased costs for electricity, we've also been gaining increased yield for electricity as well. Some of the prices have come down. We see we're on the tail end of that, and the biggest pressure this year is the reduction in the value of the electricity being sold through the plant and the income that we yield through the contract. So that's created the bigger pressure this year, and also why we have a specific contingency in place to manage that, because of the volatility and the difficulty in forecasting the income that's yielded from that. Not sure if that helps.
Councillor Corey.
Lesson learnt, Chairman. That was my question. And my computer keeps turning itself on and off, so I've not managed to drill down to get another one. So I might have a look, but for the moment, thank you, Councillor Parkinson, for making my question.
We're sharing the same script. Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you. On a similar theme of cuts, really, page 46, the cuts to the capital scheme delays, it would seem the language varies. I mean, there's some big numbers there. I think it warrants more than a few lines, with the greatest respect, Mr. Chairman, that we're, you know, going to push back 13-14 million pounds worth of spend in order to balance the budget. In particular, I'm concerned about the impact on children from these changes. I completely understand my colleague's question with regards to SEND and the allocations there. But what is the impact? Has an impact assessment been done? And do the parents of these children know, if I'm reading the report correctly, that what they're expecting has now been cancelled or postponed, delayed? And do we have some surety that it's not going to keep getting pushed back? Because that's I can only imagine, but, you know, £12 million on SEND pupils with EHC plans, Mr. Chairman, that's going to be a lot of children affected. And I suspect children and parents who were expecting something sooner rather than later. So a little detail about this batch of cuts would be useful as well, please.
So if I can firstly reassure there is nothing that's been cut from the capital programme. The programme's approved by council each year, and nothing has been taken out of the programme during the year. The underspends are often just due to timing and whether the budget has been allocated to the correct financial year in terms of timing of delivery. There's a specific delay in the SMH school which is reliant on government matched funding, and that's been held up at government, I believe. So we're very much reliant on the government decision to deliver that spend, and that's 7 million of that. The SEND mitigations, as we've just talked about, are part of the Better Belongings decision that's just recently come through from Executive, and it's just a timing delivery and when the spend will be incurred, but nothing's been reduced from the programme. I wasn't sure which specific bit you was looking at to know which bit to
Thank you.
There.
I think it would be useful for that list at the top of page 46 to understand the rephasing from when to when.
Yeah, so we can definitely come back with
Thank you.
Andrew.
Just add to that, it's just it bleeds a bit into Karen's paper shortly as well. So making sure that we've got all capital spend in the right year and you know, profiled in the right places is important around where, you know, obviously a lot of these schemes are often grant funded, but where, you know, we're using our own funds, it's making sure that we can plan the treasury management activity effectively as well, so we aren't making decisions that, for example, borrowing before we need to, and that's really important as well to ensure that we're maximising the impact on the broader revenue bottom line of the council as well. So that's one of the reasons why we do it, but I take on board around better descriptions about what years they're going and where for future reports. It's fair comment.
Thank you, Andrew. Councillor Corey.
Thank you, Chairman. Also on point 8 on page 46, the fire and rescue control project. I mean, that's a big chunk of revenue, and I'm alarmed. I mean, this is key infrastructure for the service. It's absolutely understandably central to their ability to respond and deliver. So can you give any detail on why we're expected to delay that project?
So this is capital, not revenue, so it's not delivering. I believe the control project is delivering in line with expectations. It'll just be the timing of the spend. If Andrew's got anything.
Yeah, it's just, I think there was an issue with there's been issues with the implementation of the new project. So the control system that the fire authority are using is completely fine. They are in the process of moving over onto a new one. This is around a slight slippage in the implementation timeline, like with the other schemes. Yeah. If you need more information, I'm happy to provide more offline for you. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Page 35, there's mention there of the new IT contract and the Bull. So I was just asking for a bit more detail. Obviously, it did cause us some amusement that the previous administration negotiated this contract and then somebody else was claiming £30 million worth of savings as their initiative. But fine, that's politics. But of course, there is no saving at the moment because we're going to have to spend nearly £7 million doing certain things. I think it's been through a decision process, but I thought for the rest of the members, if a bit of an explanation of what's going on so we all understand, both with Bull and with the new IT contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Hill. So there was more detail in the June exec report in terms of the actual initial plan. I'm pleased to say that the new contract went live yesterday on time and successfully as well. So version 1 have been with us for a number of months now. Some of the costs that we talk about in that six or so £6 million has been related to dual running. So obviously we've still got we're in the process of transferring Serco off-site, and that will happen over the next month as well. So obviously you're paying for two elements of contracts. That's part and parcel of that. We've also been through a significant restructure which will deliver a bottom line saving for next year of about £500,000, and we've had to sadly lose some colleagues, and exit costs related to those make up some of that figure as well. But a big chunk of that money is around this introduction of product teams. So we're working hard at the moment across four key areas really that will deliver savings in future years. So around AI and automation, what we're calling modern workplace, and that's making the most out of the current Microsoft technology that we use, things like Copilot, SharePoint, etc. As you do in councils, everybody just gets on with their own thing, and we pay a lot of storage costs at the moment. And the idea behind that is essentially collapsing the amount of storage that we need to pay for on a pay-as-you-go basis. So that should yield some significant savings as well. We're also moving towards what we're calling a unified data platform. So this allows us to ensure all of the council's key data is in a single repository that allows us to probably maximise the benefits of AI in future, and it allows us to service plan, predict service growth a lot better, and perhaps, going back to your earlier question, also help us manage our budgets better in certain places as well. And then, so they're the key pieces of work we're doing, and in January, alongside the budget proposals, we'll be bringing essentially a new IT strategy, which will talk about what those programmes will deliver and when. And I'm really optimistic, which is probably rare for me to say as a Section 151 officer, but you can see through some of the emerging work that we're doing that automation can provide some real cost benefits, and help us manage what is the natural ageing of the organisation as well, and how that works. So yeah, hopefully that's a sufficient answer for you for now. What would you? Bull, yes. So Bull was a programme that we undertook over the last 18 months. The idea behind that was, particularly once Tom Baker, our new site CIO, joined us, was around really creating the groundwork for the new contract. We've talked previously around rapidly improving our cyber position, and the team have done that. So investment in things like security operations centres, new firewalls, etc. So positive improvements in that space in particular, but also as well massive technical uptick in our connectivity. A lot of the old sort of blue circles of death that we used to get on Wednesday mornings, hopefully they're a thing of the past now, and have, I say, very much laid the groundwork for this new contract. So, and that programme's coming to an end now.
Thank you. I don't know. Last orders.
Yeah, I've caused confusion with the lighting system by being too optimistic, possibly. Yeah, sorry.
Was the wind stopped? Thank you very much, Andrew. Any other questions? Councillor Kane? Councillor Kane, Councillor Parkinson.
Okay. It's more of a general question really around the Treasury, and I suppose the conversation on internal versus external borrowing. And I suppose as the cost pressures increase, there'll be more consideration given to the amount of internal borrowing that we do versus external borrowing. So what's the Treasury's current thoughts on, is there a point where we're going to have a preference to external rather than internal? Is there like a hard line on that, or sort of where are we at the moment?
I think the pressures on the capital programme are probably not as relevant as how we manage our cash daily. And if you don't mind, can we defer that question until Karen's report, because she can probably give you a much better answer than I can. Thank you.
Yes, I think that's probably right. Any further questions? No. Okay. We'll go for the vote. Can I have a proposer? Mike Beecham. And a seconder. And those in favour? Oh, sorry, that was actually... Sorry, let me go... Hold on. Oh. Is that a fire alarm? Sorry, right. In actual fact, I missed a bit out, so that's all right. That's why the alarm went off. The actions proposed for the report. Consider the report and determine whether members support the recommendations to the executive set out on pages 13. Agree that the board's comments be passed to the executive in relation to this item. Suggested proposal. I move that the board supports the recommendations to the executive as detailed on page 13 of the report. And I ask our comments are captured by the scrutiny officer be shared with the executive for its consideration ahead of its decision in December. Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? Thank you very much. That is passed. I'll wait to see if we are meant to be running out into the street, but I hope not, because it's colder out there than it isn't here. Right, okay. We'll go on to item 8. Treasury Management Performance for 2025-26, quarter 2 to September the 30th, 2025. The Scrutiny Report, which can be found on pages 59 to 88 of the agenda pack, presents the Council's Treasury Management activities and performance for the quarter 2 of 2025-26, comparing them with the approved Treasury and investment strategies and fulfilling the reporting requirements of the CIPFA Code of Practice. The report will be presented by Karen Tong, Strategic Finance Manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And hello, everyone. As the Chairman said, this report focuses on treasury management activity up for the first half of the year up to the 30th of September 25, and compares this activity to the strategy that was prepared in the previous February 25. And it's broken down into the usual 3 main areas: interest rates, economic forecast, investments and borrowing. Really the position at quarter 2 hasn't changed significantly from quarter 1 that was reported to this committee, albeit the economy is and the growth is struggling, continues to struggle and remains bumbling along around the 1% forecast, and public finances look weak. Unemployment has also risen recently. And obviously there's an impending budget at the end of this month to see how matters are going to be addressed. This is causing certain uncertainties in the markets because of how they're going to address the issues. Short-term rates have followed the forecast predominantly. They were cut in August to 4% as projected. There's a further indication of a cut in February to 3.75%. But as a result of the uncertainties and certainly what happens as a result of the budget, that might possibly be brought forward to December is the current thinking. Long-term rates have fallen back somewhat at the end of the quarter. You can see that on Appendix A of your pack, page 67. There's a graph there that shows they have fallen back slightly, but they're still high, and they're still forecast to fall, and they're still above our target levels for borrowing. Moving on to investments, Appendix B on page 73 of your pack shows a detailed analysis of the position, but you can see that the balance of investments at the end of September was just below 188 million. This balance fluctuates daily depending on cash flow, and for a comparison, today's balance is around 270 million. But interestingly, the balance on the previous September 24 was 49 million higher than it is at this year's balance. So that's just an indication of how balances are dropping gradually. The graph on Appendix B also shows that interest returns have remained fairly level over the period, and that's despite the falling interest rate environment. And that's been achieved by locking into strategic investments for a bit of a longer length to lock in on the rates before they fall. The average length of the maturity was 115 days at the end of September, which hasn't changed from June. I'll just put a caveat in there that as cash balances do fall, the opportunity to make these strategic investments will diminish over time, because we'll have to concentrate on liquidity and maintaining liquidity. But saying that, I'm pleased to confirm that we continue to outperform the benchmarks by a considerable amount again over the quarter, and we've also continued to outperform our other benchmark comparators in our advisors group by some margin too. In terms of the annual investment strategy and the creditworthiness and the lending list, there's been no changes to that. There have been no breaches during the quarter. But I did point out in the report something that's happened since the quarter two, is that the sovereign rating of France and Belgium have now been reduced by all three credit agencies. And so, unfortunately, that means they don't meet our minimums, and they've been removed from our lending list, which means French banks and Belgian banks have been removed from the lending list, sorry. But there was no exposure to these banks, so it hasn't had an impact, albeit that we can't lend to them anymore, but we didn't lend to many in that area, to be honest. Borrowing, moving on to borrowing, you can see the position in Appendix F on page 87 of the borrowing. Again, this hasn't changed significantly. It's changed for timing of capital, projected capital expenditure, as Andrew's alluded to earlier. And so the borrowing requirement for the year has now reduced to just under 81 million at the 30th of September. But I did note that it's projected to fall even more. In the previous paper on page 17, on table 2, they are projecting a further 13 million drop in borrowing requirements. So that's going to be factored in the next quarter, obviously. So that is dropping, and that is because of changes, movements in timing of capital expenditure. To fulfil the requirements, I should say that drop in borrowing requirement has meant now that I'm projecting that we'll have to borrow just over 8 million externally at the end of September to maintain our chosen liquidity level, as forecast in the debt liability benchmarking exercise. Again, that is subject to capital expenditure being fully spent and no more changes, which is not likely. But that's the position at the moment. And like I say, to fulfil the requirements of the strategy, if we do have to borrow externally this year, that will be over a short period, because that's the cheapest part of the borrowing yield curve at the moment, and it will be as late as possible. Because we are expecting rates to fall, so you don't want to lock in before that happens. One more thing to note on borrowing was we did have to borrow temporarily. In the quarter, 15 million was taken for 1 month at a cost of 4.10%, and this is due to liquidity shortfalls, and specifically it was due to the late receipt of our monthly VAT refund. And the reason for that was because we have a threshold, HMRC have a threshold for us of around 10 million, and it went over that for this particular month, and so they had to make more checks on our claim, which hence the delay. So that was the reason for that, but we did get interest from them when we finally did get the refund because of the delay, and the cost of that borrowing was less than the interest we earned on the cash on the receipt of that borrowing. So in effect, it was cost neutral apart from the liquidity delay. One more thing to mention before I finish is that, please say, we delivered the member training session on Tuesday for members of Treasury Management. And thank you for all those attending, and I hope you found it useful. The slides and the recording of that training is going to be passed to members who were not in attendance. And we just request that if those members could review those slides and recordings, and just acknowledge the review and acknowledge if they've got any further support that they need, because we are monitoring the training that is delivered to members to tick off. I think Andrew has to tick off that we've done so. But that's all, Chairman, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I can confirm it's not last orders at the bar. It was actually just a test. So we're okay. We haven't got to run out. So that's it. Excellent. Now, over to the councillors. Councillor Hill.
Yeah, 2 questions, Chairman. The first one, just as Karen has said, the £50 million of month borrowing. I mean, obviously, new administration is, fairly is saying, well, we want to try and minimise borrowing. So I suppose the question is, was there no other way? Because it was for 1 month, and it has been explained it's to do with HMRC paying late. But surely the amount of money we hold, was it absolutely necessary? Because, this is the first bit of borrowing which has been done since May. So I just wonder, was there no other way?
Well, we forecast a liquidity shortfall, which means that the amounts of money in place that we hold in place in funds to draw on for when we need money to draw back on was forecast to be zero. And so the only alternative then is to rely on your other avenues of seeking cash flow, and one of those in the tools of our liquidity arrangements is to seek borrowing from the money markets. You want to seek it from places where it's going to be the the lowest cost, as it were. So the other alternatives would be overdraft from our bank, or other banks that we've got contacts with lending the money to us. But the cheapest avenue was the money market route, and to make sure that it was lower than what we're actually earning on that cash.
Can I carry on? A pragmatic decision, probably, I'll say. I suppose the other thing is obviously, welcome the news that the borrowing requirement, there still will be 72 million, possibly of the internal borrowing. Just what is, because this isn't a free ride, is it? Of course, we then forego the interest we would receive. So borrowing that 72 million, how much interest will we lose over the period that, well, it'll be forever, won't it? So annual cost of losing money we'll lose by covering it with internal borrowing.
Yes, you're quite right. There's an opportunity cost of using your own cash resources to finance your programme instead of externally borrowing. And as part of the strategy, in times when the cost of borrowing is higher than what you can earn on your cash, then that's why we internally borrow, you know, because the cost is minimal, but there is a cost. I think I can estimate, I mean, that the internal borrowing balance at the end of last year was just over 250 million. That's how much we've internally borrowed. And that would cost us at a yield, that's cost us, we've foregone interest earned on that of about 3.6 million to date. But saying that, it would have cost us 8.3 million if we borrowed externally. So we've actually, you know, we've saved overall just under 5 million by that strategy. But yeah, it's whatever you earn on your car.
Can I Well, is it 3 million or something like that, is my guess? 4. So it'd be... Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. I've got a quick question, actually, Karen. So, obviously, the idea of having and lending money to other, which we do, other councils and other places, etc., because we get a bigger return. Is there a worry that if we have to keep the LOBO loans, aren't they, the short loans, the short-term loans? They're not. What's a LOBO loan? Is that not correct? A short monthly loan.
A LOBO loan, I mean, it stands for lender's option, borrower's option, and that's market debt for our long-term.
Right, sorry, I've got the wrong one. That's fine.
Thing, yeah.
My point was, is it not worth us having a bit more emergency fund in case we have a similar situation to needing the 15 million? Because what would worry me is that if we have to, and I don't know exactly how the ratings work, but if we have to occasionally have a short-term finance agreement with somebody, that might affect our credit rating. Is that not something, is that how it works or not? And also, is it, going back to my first question, is it not worth us having probably foregoing some of the investments, probably the ones that we were investing in France, take them out and put them as a reserve just in case we need it again?
Well, that goes back to my comment about liquidity and not being able to make strategic investments going forward, or that will diminish. And that's likely what's going to happen. To be fair, we're going to have to place more of our cash in liquid money market funds rather than locking out in strategic investments and lending to other locals to make a bit of a return. But you're going to lose that return because the liquidity funds are variable and they sort of track the base rate, so they'll fall with the base rate. Whereas, you know, locking out funds is how you make the extra return over your benchmarks. So we are going to have to forego that as cash balances drop to avoid the gaps in liquidity. But ultimately, when your liquidity money has run out, then we will have to sort of start looking at the internal borrowing position and maybe externalising that to maintain our liquidity overall.
Thank you, Karen, and congratulations on making money out of HMRC. It's very rare. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chair. With the interest rates changing, what's the main treasury risk you're preparing for over the next 6 to 12 months, and how will that affect borrowing and the investments? And just on a side note, you said that you've removed some of these lenders off the thing, but you did say we did lend to a few. Do you know how many a few is as well, please? Thank you.
Well, just to answer that one first, the few is one French bank, Credit Industrial Commercial, I think it's called, that was quite regular in the market. So they've gone. The rest of them, they weren't on that lending list because they weren't high enough anyway, credit rated. But in terms of interest rates and borrowing and stuff, we follow the strategy. So I think what was alluded to in the training earlier on, if rates are forecast to fall, investment rates are forecast to fall, you try and lock out longer with fixed investments to lock in the rate before it falls, and the reverse is for borrowing. So if borrowing is forecast to fall, you don't take your borrowing earlier, you wait until it falls, and you also borrow at the cheapest part of the curve. So, for example, for 5 years instead of 50. Or if 50-year money was the cheapest, then and at that time you would lock in, as long as possible for that cheapest rate, because you're securing that really low rate for a long time, and that sort of thing. So that's how we mitigate the movement in interest rates in accordance with the strategy. Has that answered everything? Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. Councillor Corey.
No questions from me.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know what,
Sorry,
I don't think I
we had you
indicated.
down. I don't know. Perhaps you sneezed or put your hand up.
Apologies for sneezing.
No, that's fine. Councillor Davies.
Thank you. Just a couple of bits, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Just 2 questions, really. Firstly, thank you very much for the training. It was very useful. If you could share all the slides with everybody, I think that would be helpful. I thought the consultancy and some of the data was really useful and good to run through. Just to echo your comments about HMRC and getting money out of them, obviously as a small business owner, I love HMRC. I just want to put that on record. They are lovely, lovely people, but you did well to get interest payments out of them. My first question is, what was the VAT spike that flagged up? What contributed to that? And if I can come back for one other small question, I'd be grateful.
Thank you. Karen.
Can I pass to my colleague Claire? She's got more detail on the actual circumstances of the VAT return.
So what we're finding is due to general increased revenue costs, inflationary increases. We also now have schools claiming VAT. Those sort of things have impacted. And this week we've provided HMRC with an email saying that actually the 10 million is occurring more frequently. 3 years ago it didn't happen at all. Last year it happened once. This year it's already happened 3 times. And asking them if they can increase this amount. All it takes is a larger than average, say, highways invoice, and it will just tip you over that at the moment. So that's what we've requested this week, and we'll be chasing that if we don't hear back promptly.
What I'm hearing from that, Mr. Chairman, it's a general trend, really. Just that makes sense. Thank you. My second question is, and I don't know how much work's done on this, and it's alluded to in your report, but what is our reliance, and Michelle might be able to help with this, and Andrew, what is our reliance for revenue on investment return? Do we do a huge amount of work about that?
Well, I have to manage a cash flow, and it is becoming increasingly more important to make that more robust. So we are trying to beef up our cash flow and get information on expected overspends, use of reserves, etc. Because it does kick in to the figures ultimately on how much we can continue to internally borrow or not internally borrow. So I do, we do have got a long-term cash flow already, but we're trying to make it more robust and get more information on that going forward, particularly in light of the send underspends, which are significant numbers, aren't they now? So it will impact. But prior to that, our reserves have been pretty stable over the years, but the last couple of years, it's looking not the case, so it will have an impact.
Thank you, Karen. Andrew.
Just add a bit more in terms of the overall budget construct. So our capital financing budget, so it's listed as in the other paper, has 3 main components to it. So it has we have the interest earned, the interest paid, and then the minimum revenue provision budget that we have. The council took a decision in about 2021 to uplift that capital financing budget to pay for future major projects, particularly around the after effects of the Lincoln Eastern Bypass, Grantham Southern Relief Road and the North Highcombe Relief Road. And that's been, I guess, because those programmes haven't finished yet, that budget has been underspending on each year since then, which the council's made the decision to create the voluntary revenue provision that's been in place each year. So at some point when those programmes come online, that budget won't underspend anymore, and that'll make those voluntary revenue provisions more difficult to do. So that's the impact of it. And since the spike in interest rates, was it 2022? Obviously, we've been externally borrowing, but the money that we've had out has generated a good return for us and has contributed to those sizable underspends.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
Very briefly, Chairman, I don't want to dent Councillor Davies's love of HMRC, and I'm sure you love them as well, but my understanding is that we didn't make money out of it. They didn't fully reimburse us for all the borrowing. But what's new with HMRC?
Damn, I thought we'd made some money out of them. Well, the important thing to say is that obviously, Claire, of course, is the fact that they should review the level since inflation has gone up so much. So that's hopefully not going to happen. Okay, thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you. A couple of points, if the board will indulge me. So, obviously, come back to the point that I made previously around the decision to choose internal versus external borrowing. It's quite clear if we're now having to borrow just to cover our liquidity, that I would imagine there is much more of a preference to borrow externally now against that rather than utilising cash reserves, I assume.
We'll do it in accordance with what the strategy says, and borrowing is still higher. The cost of borrowing is still higher than using our own funds. But when you start running out of your own cash, that you've got no alternative. So we will use as much internal borrowing as we can without having to do that, really. But then if we do have to do it, like I said, we will do it at the cheapest point of the curve and the latest possible time. And see, because the numbers are constantly changing and reviewing anyway, so we'll see what happens at the end of March and what position we're in. But you know, you do it in accordance with the strategy, and the strategy is saying all internal borrowing, but obviously you can't do that to the detriment of running out of cash.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the point, isn't it? I think if you look at any, say, private company, they wouldn't want to find themselves in a position where they're having to borrow each month to fund the cash flow. It wouldn't make sense.
But this internal borrowing that we've done so far, it's just a decision on how we choose to finance our capital financing requirement, which is a commitment to borrow. You know, and we've chosen over the past years to do it internally, up to date, where we can to follow best strategy. But at the end of the day, we have committed to borrowing for that for past meeting, expenditure. So it's just trying to work that to the best possible advantage for the council.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely understand it. I think it's just something that obviously is worth being careful of, particularly given the current volatility in markets at the moment and what's going to come up at the end of this month as well. The other thing I have been doing, I've been looking at obviously the current investment list. So there isn't a historic risk of default on any of the 3 money market funds, but there must be a risk of default because it goes on the bank's balance sheet. So if something was to happen to the bank, there is a risk of default. Is there any particular reason it's not on there?
Good question. No, I don't know. It's not supplied by our advisors. That historical default risk we get from our advisors at year end. But I would just say that the money market funds are AAA rated and quite low risk funds, so it would be low. But I can ask the question.
It's just because with the money market funds, if anything was to happen, it sits on the bank's balance sheet. So there must be a risk of default at some point. Now, when you look at the financial position of the companies, it's unlikely that like Deutsche or Morgan are going to go, but it's just something that's worth looking at.
Yeah, I'll find out what it. I'll make sure it's on there for you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And then just looking at a couple of the other investments, I know that I raised it previously around who we're actually investing in. So I've looked through the financials of a lot of these local authorities and the businesses. A lot of them are fairly strong. The one that stands out really is Gloucester City Council, that are still in some quite significant financial difficulty. I know that historically you've mentioned that there isn't a credit rating necessarily given to these councils because they're classed as local authorities. I do think it's worth giving more thought to actually looking at the current financial position of those local authorities, because you have the leader of Gloucester County Council saying we may have to look at a Section 114. That puts the investment that we've put in there at risk. Is that really a risk that we want to look at? That's all.
Yeah, I think under the arrangements of the current Local Government Act and so forth that cover Section 114s and issues, that there is no risk of those investments being defaulted on because the government steps in to mitigate that. So there's no credit risk involved at all with these councils that are struggling with 114s, etc. To us, their obligation is to pay us back first, if anything, and then the government would step in and resolve their bankruptcy issues, as it were. So in terms of credit risk, it's minimal, and it's akin for us lending to the government, which is the best risk you can get, basically. Sorry, Andy.
Thank you, Karen. Michelle, do you still want to come in? Because it was a while ago that you...
Yeah,
And
so
then,
I think it's helpful to just distinguish the difference between the borrowing we are taking over the long term to fund capital financing and liquidity management, which is what Karen's talking about. So when we talk about needing to so we don't have any money sat in uninterest earning bank accounts. So every day the team do the actions of making sure we don't have any money sat there not earning for us, for Lincolnshire County Council. So they'll place money in the money market funds or in investments with the local authorities. And that's all based on the Treasury credit risk rating. And as Karen's just said, if you look at any local authorities' medium-term planning at the minute, I pretty much guarantee you there won't be any that's saying they're not in financial difficulty or struggling, us included. And it's what they do after that. So we do keep an eye on things like Section 114 notices, making sure that we're not, aiding and abetting, if you like, some of the financial difficulties that those councils have had. The liquidity management is, whilst you're offsetting all of your money into these interest earning accounts, it's usually cheaper to just take a very short-term loan on the rates that we get than trying to call back some of that money that's out there earning interest for us. So I just want to reassure people that we're not running out of cash, if that's the point of that discussion.
Thank you, Michelle. It's quite nice to know. Andrew.
So I'll be on ever decreasing returns here, given what Michelle's just said. But I think I think it's a perception rather than a reality issue at the end of the day. I hope I'm not speaking out of school. I remember breaking the news to Council Hill that we had some money out with Croydon Council when they had their 114 notice. And as politicians, I guess you don't want to be associated with that, which was the conversation that we'd had at the time. So that's why we've put in this informal process, just to make sure that I guess we're being seen to be, putting the money out, responsibly, I guess. But things do happen during the period of time that you've let the money out as well. And in terms of how, I think I said this at the last meeting, in terms of how the 114 process works is, any money due back to us is classed as a contractual payment back to us, and the 114 notice doesn't suspend that. The council that's levied the notice is still legally obliged to pay that money back to you, and is factored into the management of that process. What the actual process, the notice does is it makes the council reconvene to create a budget that does go back into balance. And there are a number of levers that do that, not least using the government's exceptional financial support mechanisms to get back to a balanced budget, because any council that has been in that space has to get back to that point. It's just how painful, how expensive, and how it is. But in and amongst all of that process, payments to suppliers, payments to people who've lent you money will continue. The thing that's actually stopped is entering into new arrangements. So hopefully that's helpful background.
Can I just add one last thing to that? None of that applies to lending to banks that are on the list. So our investments with banks are, as you say, at risk, and we try and mitigate that by having a strong credit quality minimum levels for banks. But I've been doing this long enough to remember various shocks to the market, like Barings Bank going under, the Icelandic banks all going under and stuff, and that's credit risk. So that's the risk we're trying to mitigate. And none of that applies to local authority lending for that reason. So I'm more concerned about the bank lending rather than locals, but for different reasons, obviously.
Thank you, Karen. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chair. It's just regarding the VAT. What do you anticipate this may cost us? Because it's obviously going to happen a lot more. over the year in like interest payments and lost interest as well. Can't we kind of manage the invoices slightly better by asking for a longer payment terms, or is there a penalty to that? Thank you.
I can pick up about the payment terms if that helps.
Okay.
So we obviously are required to pay within 28 days of receipt of an invoice, so we can't delay the payments. And as Claire's already said, we're just spending more, and that's reflected in our budget, and clearly that means the VAT that we're claiming is more. So I don't think we can control the spend to try and manage our VAT situation, if that helps.
In terms of the cost to us, like you say, the HMRC paid us interest on the delay of us not having the money. So what we could have earned on that money by not having it, they reimbursed us. But they didn't reimburse us to cover the cost of the borrowing we had to do to cover, you know, that position. So that's the cost. And we are trying to, as Claire said, we're getting more arrangements in place with HMRC for them not to make these delays on these levels, reviewing the levels overall. I think, Shalika, you did say that we've got something in place now with them, so we'll know when they've approved our claims. Is that right? Do you want to comment on that?
So we will receive a confirmation from HMRC when the claim is accepted. So if it's delayed or anything, we would definitely going to forecast that earlier so that we won't come across these. And as well, Claire said, the request with HMRC to review and revise our position of 10 million pre-compliance check level. Hopefully we'll receive a reply soon so that it won't repeat anytime.
So we're getting more, trying to build up the robustness of the information and the timing of when these things are due, which is something else. Sorry, could you just say that again?
The actual physical cost that it's costing the taxpayer for us to having to do this, or is there no cost at all, as in lost interest or anything like that?
The cost is as a cost of borrowing, basically, to cover that position, because you know we had to do that to maintain cash as expected.
Do you actually have a figure, an actual figure?
Oh, I can't remember the actual interest figure that we got from them. Was it? Can you about 113 million? Was it 1,000? Sorry.
I think right. Yeah, we'll come back in writing to the committee about it. I think rather if okay.
Thank you, Councillor Overton.
Thank you. Just to pick up a bit more, if I might, on the borrowing. Sorry, with the councils lending to, isn't it, lending to councils? 12 councils, it seems to be, and some of them have up to 3 each. Is there an addition? What are we doing about the reorganisation? Because some of those are in the reorganisation, I think. And also, what are we doing about? Is there an additional protection that you can get by going via the CCLA or something like that? How does that work? Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like that one?
Yeah. When local government review kicks in, new councils will be created, old ones will be merged, and at that time, we've had that already with some councils that have already gone through it, and the investments on our books remain on our books in the old name, and then the new reorganised council repays when they mature. And then any further ones you just take out in the new name of the new organisation. Did you say the CLLA? That's a company that offers funds, money market funds, and so forth. So that's just another option of a counterparty to lend.
So it's better for them to borrow from us than it is to work through an organisation, a bigger organisation like that, I guess.
Yeah, every council has a choice who they take their money from and who they lend to, and they do it to the best
interest rates are better, presumably, I guess, and then from their point of view. And then also the 2 of these should have been paid back by now, and probably have they? There's 2 that one's on the 10th and one's on the 14th of October.
They'll have been paid back on the maturity date that's stated.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Overton. Councillor Parkinson.
Just one more question. during my little look at these companies, obviously the big investment is Aberdeen Standard Investments. I don't know how much you know about Aberdeen, but I've had a bit of a look. So they consider themselves as a leader in sustainable investing and made in 2021 a multi-million-pound investment in net zero directed investments. So they consider themselves a leader in investing in net zero projects. I would suggest that's slightly at odds at this administration's goals around that. It was given £25 million to fund net zero projects. It sounds like that's kind of against what this administration, when they're elected to come in, to do.
Andrew.
I'll take that. So obviously we're in. I guess the prime focus of the current strategy is maximising returns to the council. The council has to set a treasury management policy every year, and there'll be a new one needs to be set in February. I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
I just support what Councillor Parkin has said. It's not just about this administration's policies. There is evidence that those companies which over-rely investment in ESG, environment, social, and they actually do worse in terms of returns than companies, for example, which invest in oil, invest in munitions. So I think he is right, and I think it's an issue that, you know, as politicians we need to consider, because you've got a conflict between maximising your income and at the same time doing what is felt to be the right thing. So I sympathise with what Councillor Parkin is saying. My other point is that, I mean, obviously there is some people who believe with what's going on in France and Italy and other places that there could be another financial crash, and then AAA matings and all the rest of it won't mean a lot. And some doom mongers are saying, oh goodness, it's everything's, you know, it's all going to collapse down and it will be Armageddon. So I just wonder, in terms of resilience and safety for our taxpayers, what measures are in place to try and mitigate against that unlikely but possible event?
Well, that's exactly how it's played out in terms of what we've done with the action for France and Belgium, because the credit rating agencies obviously have the same concerns, and hence that's why they've reduced the sovereign ratings of those countries, and why we've ultimately removed those banks from the lending list.
I think the point is there could be contagion. There's evidence in America.
In general, yeah.
Unregulated borrowing is. So it couldn't, if it doesn't restrict itself to those countries and it becomes a whole problem for the whole world, what can we do to try and mitigate a risk to our money?
All we can do is follow our strategy in terms of authorised lending lists and creditworthiness. And if that scenario does pan out, then the credit rating agencies will have a hard job because they'll be downgrading everything. You know, ultimately we'll be restricted to who we can lend our money to, but we won't be on our own. You know, it'll be a global thing. You can only sort of mitigate it with the risk aversions you've got in place, and we've got fairly robust credit rating in place now. We haven't got caught out by losing any monies to anyone in recent history. We avoided the Icelandic issue because we'd pulled those banks before they got into trouble. So it's just demonstrating our creditworthiness policy in action, and that's all we can do really. Can I just clarify in terms of the Aberdeen Money Market Fund? The money market fund we have in place isn't an ESG related product from them. So that's not related. And the policy, our ESG policy in terms of lending, if they do offer ESG related products, they have to be at the same rate of return than their normal products. We don't accept a lower return for investing for ESG reasons. So that's our current policy, and we don't have any ESG products.
Yeah, just to come back on that, because obviously most banks now are committed to having net zero portfolios by 2050. Pretty much every big bank is now subscribed to that. So it is something that in the next 10 to 15 years you're going to see pretty much all portfolios be effectively net zero at that point.
They'll offer products on that basis that we choose to invest in or not.
But Aberdeen have committed to all portfolios by 2050 being net zero. So
we'll
that's
see how it affects their returns, and then act accordingly. Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. So can I confirm, Councillor Hill, you said drill, baby, drill is probably the it's probably the way to go?
No, what I actually said, Chairman, was that there is a balance, which I think people, both in the pension fund and for us, an active choice. And I just would add, do we need to look at our strategy? Because, there is a risk, I think a growing risk, that everything could blow up. But I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Any further questions? I have got one question. I noticed that our balance, or our liquidity, has gone down £49 million last year, and I think it was at 189 at one point. Is that correct? What worries me is that can't keep going on every year on year, because my maths isn't fantastic, but I would have thought 2 or 3 years we could technically run out of money. Is that correct?
Well, again, this goes back to the point of managing your liquidity position and correcting that by externally borrowing if we get into that position. But it does all depend on overspends, underspends, use of reserves going forward, and the planned capital expenditure that you're having to finance. So it's all of that in the mix as to running out of funds. But yeah, it's 49 million lower this September than it was last September, and I think that just reflected the use of reserves that happened last year as well, feeding through this time. But those balances include reserves, working capital, the cash at your bank and that sort of thing. So all of that plays a part in.
So to confirm, some of the 49 that we spent was probably internal borrowing to help with projects. Is that correct?
It could be a mixture of using internal borrowing and using reserves to depleting your cash resource overall.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, if there's no more questions, I move that the report is endorsed and officers be thanked for their detailed presentation and assurances provided. I ask that comments from our debate be passed to the Executive Council for Resources for his information. Therefore, could I have a raise of hands? Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those against? Abstentions? Thanking you. That's passed.
With your indulgence, Chairman,
Yes.
I mean, we had a debate about whether it was appropriate to move amendments. Not sure we were going to, and they said whether the executive would just be presented with a list of comments from the committee. I think, thinking about it, there's a problem with that is it might be one person made a comment which nobody else agreed with, or it could be the whole committee unanimously agreed with enthusiasm, and just having a list of comments doesn't really do justice to the debate. So I just wonder how that could be reflected when the scrutiny officers report to executive, because I think it is quite important. Otherwise, people or the executive won't know what weight to give to the various comments.
The executive councillors are present in the chamber to hear the debate. That's part of our protocol of inviting executive councillors to hear the richness of the debate. But there's no reason why we can't elaborate on the comments that we gather, and we can point out that it was a single councillor that made that comment, and we can give that flavour to it that there were several councillors that agreed with it. So there are ways of presenting those comments. But as I say, this is why we have that relationship between
the best in the world, sometimes executive members won't be able to come because they'll have prior commitments. And I just feel that, I don't know, I'm a suggestion, but I'll leave it there.
Yeah, we'll look at that and we'll make sure that we provide that flavour.
Thank you, Nigel. We'll go to item 9, Health and Safety Annual Report. This report can be found on pages 89 to 102 of the agenda pack. It provides the board with an overview of key achievements, activities, performance data across all the directorates in relation to the Lincolnshire County Council's compliance with an implementation of health and safety legislation and statutory duties. This report will be presented by Fraser Shooter, Head of Health and Safety. Over to you, Fraser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make this short and sweet. So, generally speaking, it's a positive report, once again, in relation to LCC's management of health and safety. Once again, we've received no formal action from the Health and Safety Executive, no prosecutions, no enforcement action, no formal intervention, which is always good news. We continue to grow our e-learning platform, which is where the majority of our staff access their health and safety e-learning training. We've had over 11,000 individual courses that was completed last year. That's quite a significant increase year on year, and it continues to be the main way in which most of our employees access their health and safety training. That covers a vast range of subjects, and we will continue to look at transferring many of our other courses into that digital format into the future. In relation to schools and our maintained schools, last year we hit the 7th consecutive year which we got a 100% return rate in relation to our health and safety annual self-assessment. That assessment is based on looking at key health and safety subjects within the education sector. It helps us to identify key areas for additional support or guidance that schools may need. It's welcomed by schools as well. That allows them an internal evaluation of where and how they are performing in relation to key health and safety subjects. Those subjects change year on year depending on what the flavour of the month is or what the HSE are particularly looking into that year. So it allows us to spread that information that we're getting back from schools year on year. This year's one's already gone out, went out in October. The returns will be expected in February next year, and then that results in us sort of identifying what will go in our work plan for the next year. One of the key things that came out of last year's self-assessment was the need for a schools health and safety web page, which allowed easy access for schools to get health and safety information on the key subjects. So we developed that last year, and that was launched within maintained schools last year as well. One of the other significant achievements last year was the development of our internal accident incident reporting scheme, the AIR form. It came off the back of identifying that our old system, Evo Safe, wasn't fit for purpose anymore. It was creating more problems than it was actually resolving. And with the introduction of things like MS Forms, it gave us the ability to create our own in-house system without having to rely on a third-party organisation to provide that system. That gives us complete control over that system. It allows us to tailor it to make it very, very specific for us as an organisation. It's also allowed us to tailor it for an educational system, which then we've promoted that within our maintained schools. Again, from last year's self-assessment and previous self-assessments within schools, it became clear that schools were not utilising our centralised system to report in their own accidents and incidents. They were compliant, they were using their localised systems, but it made it very difficult for us to collate that information centrally and then identify trends and patterns. So the new system, which was launched in April this year, will hopefully overcome a lot of those issues. And we have seen a significant increase in the number of maintained schools that are buying into this system and using the system. Not all maintained schools yet, but we're hoping to increase that. And again, within this year's self-assessment, we've got a set of questions that's purely around accident reporting to identify those schools that are maybe not yet utilising that system, so we can talk to them individually and hopefully get them on board. One of the other things we developed as well was the Personal Evacuation Emergency Plan System, the PEEPS process. We have a duty to evaluate employees and visitors who may require additional assistance in the event of emergency evacuation. The old system that we had was very paper intense, very labour intense. It was quite old fashioned. So again, utilising the systems that we have available to us now with MS Forms, we're able to internally develop our own system, make it a lot easier, a lot more user friendly, make it more focused. That was developed in conjunction with several employee groups and managers to make it as user friendly and obviously cover all the likely incidents that we're likely to identify as part of that process. Again, that was launched and that's been well received with those members of staff who do require a personal evacuation plan. In relation to our team, we've continued to create learning opportunities. We've recently taken on a new apprenticeship. That's the third apprenticeship that we've had in the last 10 years. And they'll take a 3-year qualification, at the end of which they'll get a nationally recognised health and safety qualification. So you'll have another health and safety wandering the halls in 3 years' time. So again, we continue to try and create those opportunities within the team. And then finally, the accident stats, they remain fairly consistent year on year. We do see a regular increase within the number of near misses that we get reported. That's primarily because we do a lot more communication about wanting staff to report near misses. It was one of the things that was slightly amiss with staff. They would only report things if they'd had an actual injury. So we've promoted that over the last 3 years. And again, the new AIR system makes it easier to report near misses. It increases the number of near misses that we expect to be reported to us as a health and safety team. And we've included things within the new AIR system like the ability to report more unacceptable behaviour that staff might be experiencing, so aggression, abuse and things like that. So we are predicting, although the numbers are fairly consistent over the last 3 years, we are predicting an increase in just the number of incidents that will be reported on the system next year. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It sets a new benchmark. It shows that staff have embraced the new system and are reporting things that they historically should have been reporting but not necessarily were doing, unfortunately. So that's a brief run through the report. I'm happy to take any questions in relation to that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Fraser. We'll now move on to the members' debate. I believe we've got a Councillor Brooks. I'd like to start.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the report, Fraser, fantastic. Love the windmill on the first page. Burley Marsh with the sails on. Let's hope we get that back on there, eh? Thank you very much. Right, my question. With staff movement and organisational changes ahead, how will you make sure health and safety stays fully compliant throughout the transition? And I'm assuming we've got a plan. Well, I hope we've got a plan. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that obviously will be part of our work plan moving forward, that continual evaluation of how things will change, depending on what the end game will be. We don't know what that is yet, but obviously we'll keep health and safety high on the agenda during those discussions. We are changing the way in which we'll be reporting health and safety to senior managers. We used to have a corporate group. We've now disbanded that, and we will be attending the CLTs, DLTs and SLTs in the group and making sure that health and safety is a regular item within those agendas. So obviously when they're having discussions about the future, it's always on the agenda and can be part of that discussion going forward. What it will look like in the future, we don't know. But ultimately the rules, the regulations will not change. So there will still be the line in the sand that we still have to abide by. That won't change. It's just the way in which we achieve that will probably alter. Thank you.
Thank you, Fraser. Councillor Collier.
Yes, thank you, Chair. On page 101, there is mention of RIDA, reportable incidents. Can you give us some example of what the headline year-on-year trends of these incidents look like in terms of near misses and incident severity? And what targets have been set for the new accident reporting system development, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so in relation to the type of incidents that's RID or reportable, it's normally the threshold of having 7 or more days off of work. There's 2 main criteria, which is there is a list of significant injuries. That's quite serious injuries like broken legs, electrical shock, those kind of things. We have little or no of them, thankfully. It's normally the threshold of hitting, having more than 7 days off work as a result of a injury at work. Unfortunately, the rules aren't very fair, as in if you go off on a Wednesday, you have to class the Saturday and Sunday as part of that criteria, even though they wouldn't be at work anyway. So sometimes they have an injury on the Wednesday, it goes over the weekend, they come back the following Tuesday, but just the way in which it calculates, it means that it hits the target and we have to report it. Most of the time, they're not very significant. It's bumps, slips, trips, falls, manual handling are the key ones. There's not many go over what we've classed as long-term sick. It's normally just those sort of, what would I say, 7 to 10 days as a result of a fortnight normally is what the criteria is. In relation to targets, it's going to be difficult, as I say, with the new accident reporting system, that will set a new benchmark. That will allow us to know exactly probably more what the true number of incidents we are having within the authority. Therefore, we can look to set that criteria in relation to RIDOR. Also, RIDOR doesn't just apply to employees, it applies to non-employees, and with more and more schools using our system report, we are seeing the numbers go up. the criteria for what is RIDDOR reportable for an employee and what's RIDDOR reportable for a non-employee is different. It's not to do with the severity. Obviously, they can't go off work. They are a member of the public. It's mainly to do with, did they go to a hospital directly from the site of where they had the injury? And in schools where you've got lots of pupils having bumps, bangs, things like that, a lot of the time they will go from the school to the A&E, receive very minimal treatment, a plaster, an x-ray, something like that, nothing serious, nothing significant, but they've hit that threshold of just going from site to hospital, and therefore it becomes RIDDOR. As I say, the HSE haven't contacted us at all in relation to any of our ones that have been reported, because I just don't think it hits their higher threshold, it just meets the regulation threshold. Thank you.
Thank you, Fraser. Any further questions? Sorry, Councillor Overton.
Thanks very much. I'm thinking about the projected safety risks that we might need to consider. And one of the aspects that's come up recently is that the UK Health and Safety Executive nationally have responded to one of the planning applications for battery storage, that they don't want it so close to schools. And I wonder if we should be looking at that as an issue. There is new guidance out, and there's new guidance on the way as well. And maybe we should consider, one of the proposals was to have these things, we're talking about something like 1,300 shipping containers of lithium. They suggest lithium batteries. They're suggesting that that should be maybe 2 miles from a primary school. So I think, maybe our health and safety could consider this and have a look at whether there's any impact on what we do. Thank you.
Yeah, I can't really make any comment about that because I'm not really aware of that situation. But obviously, as an health and safety team, if any of the officers who were dealing with that wanted guidance, support, information in relation to the impact of that and the compliance with the HSE guidance, and obviously we will be there to provide that guidance and information.
Thank you, Fraser. Debbie Barnes.
Yeah, just to support what Fraser was saying in terms of any legislation that impacts on health and safety or on our planning framework would be taken into account once it's published or clearly before that in terms of any opportunities for consultation that we'd have as well.
Thank you. Councillor Beecham.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The risk register highlights potential HSE enforcements relating to partners and contractors, which is in amber status. What mitigations and joint assurance mechanisms are in place for those contracts that fit into a high risk category? What lessons have we learned in the past year, and how are those lessons being embedded in commissioning and procurement?
Yeah, thank you. So although the risk is amber, the level of assurance that we can give in relation to how we manage that is substantial, and there's many systems in place in relation to that. One of the key things links to CDM, Control Design Management Regulations. Most of our bigger contracts are construction based when we look at the highways contract and things like that. So a significant amount of pre-tender evaluation is undertaken in relation to their health and safety standards. Within the tender document, it's quite clear in relation to what documentation we need from them to give us the assurance that they are a competent contractor. As a client, that's our main duty in relation to health and safety. They are the professionals in undertaking the work, but we have a duty to ensure that they are a competent contractor. And one of the ways we do that is to evaluate their own performance when it comes to health and safety over their previous contracts and years. So that includes things like accident statistics, training statistics, recommendations. We have access to things like the HSE's databases on prosecutions, formal actions and things like that. So we can check that contractor's history in relation to their involvement with the HSE, any previous prosecutions, fines and things like that. So we evaluate that against that. That's not to say that if they have had a prosecution, they are struck off. In fact, most of the time, contractors who have had some involvement in the HSE are normally better performing after that because they've had their wrist slapped. And so therefore the health and safety becomes higher up the agenda, they invest more money in it, and therefore they don't want to find themselves in that situation again. So just because a company hasn't had any involvement from the HSE doesn't necessarily mean they are a good health and safety performer. They may just have been lucky That's the key. So we have many systems in place for evaluating essentially the competency of contractors that we use. Recently, I think beginning of the year, we did the Vinci contract, which is the property maintenance contract, which again, many meetings, many focus purely on their health and safety performance, looking at their documentation. Obviously, we can only make an evaluation on the information they send us, but that's based on the questions that we set for them as part of the tender process.
Thank you, Fraser. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chair. It's just about the pupils' injuries, really. You say it's going to grow. I've got 3 children. I know it's going to grow, without a doubt. That's probably just from my 3. Does it come to a point where it causes us an issue when it gets really high, or is it just purely just for data? Thank you.
Because the new system allows us to basically investigate each of those incidents with more details. As I say, we've got more schools using it. There's more data there for us to analyse and look over. I must admit, many of the accidents are just what you would call playground bumps and bangs. Nothing to be too worried about, nothing to be seriously concerned about. The ability on the form allows the teacher or the head teacher who's completed to identify what actions they've taken to prevent reoccurrence. Now, most of the time, that's very difficult with children running around in the playground. But because we've got the ability to evaluate every single response that comes in, the ones that we do identify that fall within what we deem as the more serious ones, the ones that essentially become a RID or reportable or involve some element of first aid or hospital visits, we will look at that, and we will sometimes, not always, we take a judgment call based on, obviously we're seeing hundreds of these most months, so we get a bit of a feeling of the ones, or we see repetitive scores with repetitive type of injuries. We'll contact them directly and we'll just ask the question. Also, as well, the data that we collate within our accident reporting system sometimes governs the type of questions that we will have in our self-assessment.
Yes, Councillor Brooks.
Thank you. Do you ever go in and visit the schools and talk with the students at all in a private setting?
We don't speak to the pupils. We've never been asked to do that. If schools want us to go in and talk about health and safety, we're more than welcome. We can send anybody to sleep with health and safety if that's what they want us to do. But essentially, we do go and speak and teach teachers, governors, head teachers, so that, and caretakers. We have 2 primary courses that we offer to schools. One is aimed at head teachers and governors and more the management of health and safety, and then we have another course that's aimed at more operational staff, so caretakers, cleaners, cooks, those sort of staff, that sort of staff. Because although it's health and safety, there's different perspectives depending on which side of the fence you are, whether you're more of a management side or operational side. We offer those courses. They're quite productive. They're quite well received by schools. It is a cost to schools, but we do offer that out to all schools, depending on what their status is, whether they're a maintained school, whether they're an academy, or whether they're a Church of England. It really doesn't matter. They can buy into that service if they wish to. And obviously, as I said, we've now got the new website, which is open to any school. They can access that. They can get the information from there. That's got templates, guidance, puts health and safety in more of a layman's term, which they can easily understand and hopefully implement on the ground.
Yes, Councillor Brooks.
Can I just come back with that? It's regarding, for example, my son broke his fingers, and I'm just wondering, is there somewhere that you check if there's a pattern at a certain school to go in and check? Because we got the school investigated and all this sort of stuff, and we got LCC and all that sort of stuff, but nobody ever came back afterwards, and obviously with broken fingers, I would hope that somebody would just check. You know what I mean?
Yeah, broken fingers are more common than what you would think, unfortunately. It's one of those sort of things that small kids in schools seem to do. But we will, if we see a pattern, go into schools. We do, on the back of the self-assessments which we complete, go and visit a number of schools. Ones that's scored well, just to check that they are actually telling the truth. Some ones that's in the middle, ones that's not scored so well, although generally speaking schools score fairly well on the assessment, and then ones that throughout the year we may have identified trends and patterns, or they've given us cause for concern, or they've had a serious accident. We'll put them on our audit list, they will get a visit, and obviously that's a deeper dive, not just into the incident or the self-assessment, it's their general health and safety performance across, numerous questions and subject matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Fraser. Thank you. Councillor Hill.
Could I move the recommendations action, please, Chairman? I think, as long as nobody else wishes to speak.
That was my next thing to... Hold on. Councillor Collier.
I just want to say thank you for your report and how important health and safety is. But it's a worry to me, our children being stopped from being children. You know, you hear of schools that banning conkers and things like that, or running after one, or chasing and tigging, whatever you call it. I hate to think it is, because children need to be children.
Absolutely. I think anybody who knows me as an officer will know that I try and take health and safety as serious as it needs to be, but with a slight light-heartedness. We have a sensible approach to managing health and safety with Lincolnshire. I think we do anyway. I think we do that within our schools. We want children to be children. If I heard any of our schools had banned conkers, they would definitely get a visit from us. There'd be no doubt about that. So we take health and safety. We're worried about the ones that don't take it seriously, obviously, but I'm also as concerned as those who go over the top with safety. It can be as damaging as not doing any safety at all. So I think we try and strike that balance. I think my team have the same thought pattern when it comes to managing health and safety within schools and the authority as a whole. So hopefully we try and balance that line about right. But we get feedback, and hopefully that, you know, the feedback we get is fairly positive. So thank you. Cheers.
Thank you, Fraser. Right, I move that the Health and Safety Annual Report of 2024-25 be received, noting the comprehensive overview of achievements, activities and performance across all the directorates. That officers be thanked for their assurances given in relation to the existing governance, risk management and monitoring arrangements, and we support the report being published on the Council's website. Agreement of hands, please. Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. Well, I think it's time for a comfort break. So we will now take a 10-minute comfort break. So we will we'll come back at 12 o'clock, 12 noon, to go on to item 10, which is the LGR. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nigel. Right, okay, is everybody here? Excellent. Thank you. Right, on to item number 10, Local Government Reorganisation Business Case Proposal. This pre-decision scrutiny report can be found between pages 103 and 492 of the agenda pack. Additional supplementary documents have also been published in relation to this report on the 13th of November. The report to the duty leader of the Council and Executive Councillor for Community Engagement outlines the Council's business case proposal for local government reorganisation entitled Your Lincolnshire. The proposal is scheduled for submission to the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government by the 28th of November. The submission will be considered at full council on the 21st of November 2025, following which the Executive Councillor will consider the report for a decision between the 21st and 28th of November 2025. This report will be presented by Debbie Barnes, Chief Executive, and Andrew Crookham, Deputy Chief Executive and Executive Director of Resources. Also present are Claire Rowley, Head of Transformation, and Matthew Gerard, Head of Policy. Now over to you, Debbie.
Thank you very much. So I'll just do a very brief introduction, then I'm going to hand over to Claire, who will talk you through the report. Just say there's been a huge amount of work that's gone into this business case that we're going to present to you today. I think the cross-party working group that we've had have been incredibly helpful in shaping and contributing so that we can test things out. Yeah, just really to say thank you for everybody who's been involved, because it's been a huge effort. But Claire's going to bring us through the report.
Thank you, Debbie, and good afternoon meeting. So following agreement to pursue a business case proposal for Greater Lincolnshire, we've been working to produce a robust document that's in Appendix A of your packs. That sets out how we will establish a single tier of local government within Greater Lincolnshire through retaining the two unitary councils of North Lincolnshire and North East Lincolnshire, and bringing together the 7 districts and Lincolnshire County Council to create a whole new Lincolnshire Council. With estimated transition costs of 25.8 million, this proposal is estimated to provide recurring benefits of 46.4 million and will strengthen our foundation for the future, simplify services and save money by delivering better value for our residents. The business case proposal has been structured following review of the business case submissions produced by other local authorities, and is set out to present the case for change and for becoming a unitary council, and then the case for our Your Lincolnshire proposal. But as Debbie has already said, it has really been a whole council approach to this. Many people have been involved in the production of this, and also the work of the cross-party working group has been incredibly useful in informing the proposal itself. So just to run you through what's presented, the proposal identifies several limitations within the current two-tier system, which include duplicated responsibilities, fragmented governance, confusion for residents about who provides what, and inefficiencies across services such as planning, procurement, and customer contact. We've set out the local context for Lincolnshire and an evidence base that analyses Greater Lincolnshire and Lincolnshire itself population, the geography, deprivation, and an economic profile, alongside our achievements, the challenges that we all face, and the need to deliver against the national agenda. The proposal provides evidence of our strong, high-performing existing partnerships, all of which successfully operate on a county-wide Lincolnshire footprint and have been built up over many years. Aligning local government boundaries with these established service geographies is crucial for continuity, efficiency, joint working, and also continuous improvement. We've undertaken an assessment of the different structural options that have been developed across the Greater Lincolnshire area through an options appraisal of all Greater Lincolnshire proposals against the government's 6 tests for local government reorganisation. Other models, particularly those involving multiple smaller authorities, are shown to introduce significant risks through fragmentation, reduced capacity, and misalignment with our health, policing, and fire authority boundaries. The case for Your Lincolnshire proposal is set out detailing how the proposal meets each of the 6 government criteria through establishing a single tier of government, ensuring local government right-sizing, ensuring high quality and sustainable public services, meeting our local community needs, supporting the devolution arrangements, and enabling community engagement and neighbourhood empowerment. We have then set out the financial case, which presents the modelling of income, expenditure, assets, liabilities and transition costs, including those costs for transition, aggregation and also the benefits, the cost of transformation and the benefits of transformation, and also a year one estimated position for a new unitary authority in Lincolnshire. Several scenarios for harmonising council tax across the county are presented, ranging from rapid alignment to phased approaches over a longer period. The analysis demonstrates that harmonisation is achievable and supports the financial sustainability of a new unitary council for Lincolnshire. As we move to the end of the proposal, it outlines a structured implementation process that leads us to vesting day in April 2028. It describes the formation of a shadow authority, recruitment of senior leadership, and the mobilisation of key work streams. We have set out our service design principles and transition plan that prioritises continuity of high-performing services, careful workforce integration, and early transformation opportunities where appropriate. The proposal ends with appendices that provide the financial modelling approaches, engagement analysis, and letters of support from senior leaders across children's, adults, and also fire and rescue. To conclude and present to you today, we believe the York-Lincolnshire proposal builds on our strengths, ensuring our Lincolnshire residents, communities, and businesses continue to experience excellent public services. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Claire. Now, over to the members. Councillor Hill.
Well, we'll all be debating this again tomorrow, Chairman, so I don't want to linger too on it, but I have, well, two comments. One, I do have a concern, which I think we'll debate tomorrow, about in rural areas having one councillor for all services in one area. I don't know what the solution is, but it's something. And I would wonder if the case for double devolution down to parish councils, town councils is strong enough. There is time, but I'll park those. I think that's probably a debate for tomorrow. I suppose the only question, well, two questions. One is the property savings do seem very low to me. Doesn't seem to be a lot of, so I just wonder why they aren't. I expected them to be much higher than they are. And actually I'm quite surprised by the council tax equalisation. I thought because you're only talking about the district element, there does seem to be a big swing in terms of changes, but I'm particularly interested in the property, why it's not higher than I thought it might be.
Thank you, Claire. Or Andrew.
So with regards to doing the financial modelling as a whole for this business case proposal, we have had to in some areas be reliant on what's kind of publicly available. So we recognise that this is estimated based on the information that's been either provided by our colleagues at District Council or what has been publicly available. We have been, I'd say, is prudent the right word, in what we're estimating our benefits are, but we do see that there will be more work to do once we can actually get beneath the surface of what are the property and assets in each of the different organisations.
Andrew.
Yeah, and then just to add on the council tax harmonisation perspective, the challenge we've got here in Lincolnshire is the differential between Lincoln City and East Lindsey, and it's quite a wide gap, wider than a lot of the other councils that have been through harmonisation recently. And I think when you talk about the swings, it's I guess I guess the key point to make about harmonisation is it's all the decision of that new council. Really, so all we've done is trying to be illustrative in terms of what you can and can't do. You can technically do it in 1 year, but that means reductions for Lincoln, and that's a political decision that the new council might want to take if that was deemed to be. But yeah, it's predominantly around managing that differential between those two districts at the different ends.
I mean, and also, does the 5% cap still remain, in spite of the fact some areas potentially could rise?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the current legislation set last year put a 5% council tax increase on the table for 4 budget setting years, and then the assumption is it goes back down to 3% at that point. So that's as we've timed the impacts of the council tax, we've had to take that into account in the numbers. It might be 5%, who knows? But yeah, it's based on the information that we've got available.
If you went straight away, you'd have to accommodate the change.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. So yeah, there are two ways of doing it. Basically, you can either you can look at the overall council tax base as a whole, and it's called the alternative notional amount that we've talked about in the paper, or individual district level. And you have to take different approaches with the statutory order for them. Basically, that's how it works. Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hill touched on it, what I was going to ask, to be honest. Can you guarantee Skegness, Borough and Croft and our rural and coastal community areas will still have real influence in decisions made in the new unitary authority? It wasn't answered, but could you give me reassurance, please?
Okay. So, thank you. Yeah, so the double devolution bit, the ensuring that we hear the local voice. There's a number of things really within the proposal. The first thing is about parish and unparished areas, which obviously includes the Spalding area and Lincoln area in particular. There is also then creation of neighbourhood panels, which again is a mechanism to bring together your local councillors and your unitary councillors as well to look at a raft of issues impacting on the communities. I think it's fair to say that we do await guidance from government in relation to that. They have promised us much more details around what their expectation of community panels would be, but at the moment we haven't got that. We're not expecting them to have any formal powers, more that they would be an opportunity to bring people together. But we do recognise that there is a lot more work needed in relation to that. And then, again, there's a commitment in the bid to work with town and parish councils to look at what are the types of services that you would also like to see devolve down to you, so that we can look at moving forward that sort of double devolution that Councillor Hill referred to. Again, I think until the next stage and we get into the detail of working with the town and parish councils, it's difficult to know exactly what they would want to have devolved down to them. And I'm not imagining it will be one size fits all. I think some parish councils, some town councils will be really keen to get into that space and others won't be as keen to get into that space. Obviously, the legislation is quite restrictive in terms of what you can delegate down as well. And again, that's something that we'll be pushing on to see how we could exploit that a bit more.
Thank you, Debbie. Councillor Brooks again, coming back.
Thank you, Chair. Can you guarantee children's services, adult care, highways and fire will stay stable and won't be disrupted during the transition to the new council?
So the proposal that you've got before you, that the council will debate tomorrow, clearly looks at continuing authority type model so that you can continue to deliver those services on exactly the same footprint as what you've got at the moment. Without a doubt, any local government reorganisation that you look to in terms of lessons learnt is if they take their eye off the ball on the business as usual, that then they get into trouble. We think that this proposal in terms of that continuation of delivering those services on the same footprint as they're delivered at the moment brings less risk, and so that we are able to focus on business as usual. In relation to children's and adults in particular, there is a lot of national reform. We're expecting reform around the special educational needs area. We are currently piloting some of the social care reforms within adult services. Obviously, some of the changes around mental health means that there's significant reform going on. So business as usual isn't necessarily business as usual. It is also keep an eye on the transformation so that you can progress with that. We think this offers the least risk. The other one that I would say is that there was a letter that came out last week which basically said that they want to align police geography and fire and rescue geographies with the mayoral combined authorities. Again, exactly what that means, we need to wait for the legislation to understand what that means, because at the moment they're silent on it, and obviously our geography and the geography in some of the proposals that the districts are proposing clearly complicates that even further.
Thank you, Debbie. Councillor Overton.
A couple of things. One is my real concern is that what appear as benefits or savings are actually reductions or are savings that could have been made anyway. So, for example, you know, if you're bringing things together with districts and counties, and you might have an IT system that goes overall, you know, I wonder how much is stopping us doing that anyway. You know, we've got a lot of back services, well, some back services that are working together, such as the legal and the benefits. You know, how much of this could be achieved without actually losing the identity that is perhaps important to local people in those districts. That's something they've built up over since 1974. You know, that's their brand, if you like, that's been built up over many years. So I wonder, yeah, that's the first question. I'll come to the second one in a minute. Yeah, thank you. How much of the savings are real and how much could have been made anyway?
Well, we wouldn't have put them in the report if they weren't if we didn't believe they were real or deliverable. We've been through a lot of work with this just to provide some assurance, Councillor Overton, and hours and hours and hours and hours of analysis. And you know, Michelle, Debbie, Claire, Sadie sat in meetings trying to work through the numbers that we've had available to us. So I think you talk about shared services. Yeah, we haven't got them in Lincolnshire, but they are a bit like the tides. They come and go. Some work, some don't. The whole purpose of this with LGR is bringing, in our proposal is to bring something under one organisation, one strategy, one, way of doing things, and then to drill in the detail. It's one chief executive, it's one section 151 officer, it's one monitoring officer, it's one senior leadership team. It's not just where you find the shared services. You still often have. You have to have a monitoring officer, you still have to have a section 151 officer for those individual councils, so you're still carrying cost. So it is genuinely real. And then as you move through time, you harmonise your contracts, you harmonise your properties, you harmonise the policies and the way that you do things, and they all should deliver savings because you're not duplicating, essentially.
And just really to add to what Andrew was saying, and I suppose operationalise it as well, is that in an ideal world, in utopia, of course you should be able to work together in terms of shared services. The reality, though, is that governance and people's individual decision-making powers within the council come into that, don't they? So we have been working collectively, politically and officers, for years to explore a single waste authority. We've not been able to get any traction on it because the decisions are made by the individual councils. Whereas obviously if it's a unitary council, there's a single decision making. So absolutely, yeah. Ideally, boundaries and decision making shouldn't stop you working together. The reality is it does.
So which shared service doesn't work?
I don't think I said that. I said they come and go, and you still require the infrastructure to run them in your home authority. I didn't say they didn't work.
Okay, I thought you did. That's fine. The other thing is that how much account? Well, I might. I don't know if this is if I could answer that. I mean, one of the points about having, you said, one chief exec and so one team. The problem is that because it's a now bigger team, they've now got a bigger job. If they've not got a bigger job, then that means the council's got smaller. Therefore, we're providing less service. So, it's difficult to have it both ways. But anyway, I recognise that's a discussion still to be had. The other question I was interested in is about the mayor taking more powers and how that's been impacted on your costings. Because if we've got transport strategy and housing strategy and possibly some of the other monies due to go directly to the mayor, and not to the new unitary, how is that taken into account in the benefits that you're hoping to get if you haven't got those services?
I'll have a go. Well, you can only do what you can do with what you're doing now. So the organisation as it is at the moment is the straight edge that we've used to decide whatever powers change over time will, that happens, doesn't it? But you can't, like I said, we can't foresee things that do or don't happen in between now and vesting day.
Yeah, so you've not been able to hit an account, of course, because you haven't got certainty there.
No, we haven't taken into account of that. And I guess, you know, fire and rescue is a good example. The letter came out last week after we'd gone public with this paper. So obviously you can only go with what information you've got at the moment. Yeah, so it hasn't at the moment.
Thank you. And one other thing is about the neighbourhood panels. Is that included, how have you included that? Because you did say that there's an opportunity for a double devolution, which I recognise, and indeed we have that now, which we use currently with our parish councils quite effectively, where there are parish councils. But is there, have you hoped for some benefits from how has that been included in your costings?
So we haven't put anything in relation to cost savings around the neighbourhood panels. I don't think we've got the details of it yet. I think that is about waiting for the guidance, understanding the guidance, and then exploring exactly what the art of the possible is, jointly with parish and town councils as well. So I'd see that a part of the next tranche of work rather than anything at the moment. It's a concept at the moment that we've put in. We haven't done any details in terms of what would be the geography around them, how many should there be, who should attend them. Again, I think that's something that we would want to work up as part of the shadow arrangements with relevant, you know, politicians as well.
One other thing, I was just thinking about picking up actually the points earlier that made about different areas, you know, and how their voices from different parts are going to be heard. And, you know, your point about the waste, you know, one district didn't want to join it. Under the new system, they won't have a say. So you could argue that actually we're taking away that voice to some extent. So again, I mean, I understand the reasons, you know, why one might go this way, but it isn't all, you know, there's always two sides to every part of the debate. And I was just thinking that perhaps the intention, you know, that you really do want to go ahead with this, or perhaps we're pushed by central government, but if it was because we were pushed by central government, one could argue that maybe one shouldn't pay more, and just because they can't do all 21 areas in the next 2 years. So, you know, that's another way of looking at it. Thank you.
So just the point about the councillors and the decision making. Obviously, the new councillors will be elected for the new unitary authority. So district councillors are currently elected to run district councils, county councils to run councils, you know, county council services. The new unitary councillors will have the power and the decision making over all of the new unitary services. You're absolutely right. This is a government requirement that we submit by the 28th of November. They've required all 21 areas that remain two-tier. I suppose the danger is that if you don't submit and others submit, then you're not part of shaping your own destiny. Whereas if you do submit, because we know that others will submit, then at least you as a council can contribute to your own destiny rather than being seen to be done by two others. But it is a requirement at the moment. Government are clearly saying that they've got the capacity to drive forward the 21. Who knows? And they have consulted yesterday or the day before. They started the consultation on the other priority programmes as well. You will recall that they identified the first tranche, which was in the priority programme, and they cancelled the elections. They've now started the consultation on all of the other ones. Obviously, Surrey went first.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you. Just to come back on the point around parishes and these neighbourhood panels. So what you can often find is that some parish councils are really effective. They don't struggle for getting councillors on there. And then some areas really do struggle for that. So it can be quite a difficult assumption for areas that aren't used to having parish councils that they're then going to come in and have actually the people able to do that job. That's quite a difficult expectation, I would say. So if we do find ourselves in a situation where certain neighbourhood areas maybe just don't have the people involved, is that going to have any sort of a significant impact on this? Or
Again, I think it's just too soon in the process to really understand exactly how that would work. We have engaged with LAUC, we have engaged with town and parish councils, but I think in terms of a dedicated work programme around it, I think it's about the next steps once we're a bit clear in terms of what the proposal that the government consult and then make a decision on would be, so that then we plan accordingly.
Can I come back on just a separate question?
Yes, you can indeed.
It looks like we haven't decided on what bin colours we're going to be going for just yet. I know it's quite contentious, and I apologise, Rob. I assume that'll be something that's decided further down the line. I know there's some areas that don't even have bins as well, which I've heard. So is that something, that detail that will come further down the road then, I assume?
Yes, so basically there's a huge piece of work to be done once we know which proposal it is in terms of aggregating up all of the services and then planning accordingly. Things won't be 100% on day one. You want it safe, legal and compliant on day one. Very few areas, well, hardly any areas, no areas that have done local government reorganisation have got everything sorted on day one. You need it safe, legal and compliant, and then you need to look at transformation of your services over the next 2, 3, 4 years, because there is only so much that you can do, and you need to make sure that you're safe, legal and compliant for day one.
Thank you. That was a rubbish question, by the way. Yeah, go on. As long as it's not rubbish.
No, it just comes back to the proposals around council tax. So obviously each of the proposals is indicating a rise basically every year up until 2035, 36. That's a difficult one to have, in the current climate. I understand why it's necessary at times, but if you sit in a meeting, you talk to people and they say you're going to keep raising council tax every year and you say yes, that's tough. That's really, really tough conversation to have. So as far as I'm aware, these are estimates on rises. They're not set in stone, but can I get some clarity around that statement effectively?
Yep, sure. So one of the requirements of putting in a proposal is to demonstrate whether you can harmonise council tax. The main bit of the law is you need to be able to do it within 7 years. So what we've done here and through the discussions with the working group is demonstrate that it can be done is the first bit. I think the other bit to note is, if you look in the context of the wider business case, so we're asking the council to potentially deliver up to £25 million of savings this year, just because of the external the environment that we're working in. Last 3-4 years and looking ahead to next year, our cost pressure base is about £60-70 million a year now. So you look at the savings that the LGR can deliver, it's not necessarily about that, because £25 million on transformation, 21 million at aggregation, they aren't going to fill your gap. So there's a reality here is that I guess firstly that you need to present a reasonable case, i.e. that in most times when you're experiencing general cost pressures, you need to maximise the income available to you. And also as well, the warning that, which is why we've put it in the paper, that any business case that's promising massive savings in council tax, in light of all of that, is probably not being entirely upfront about the challenges that are facing the sector, or the reality of it actually. So.
Thank you. I've got a question. The biggest question, really, or the biggest thing to stay, of course, this is all if our proposal gets put through. It's got to be decided by the government, and there are different proposals. What contingencies have we put in place if some of the other options are actually chosen instead?
So the other options, there's four options on the table, so they will all be submitted by the 28th of November. Government will decide which, if any or all of them, they wish to undertake statutory consultation on, and then looking at, just before the summer recess, confirming which option they want to progress, and therefore then progressing around the statutory instruments. We had a meeting with the chief execs this morning clearly everybody has been busy working up their own business cases, and it's only more recently, over the last couple of days, that they've gone out into the public domain, that we've got a better understanding about exactly what those proposals are. Until they were in the public domain, we didn't know, for example, what Lincoln were planning on doing on their children's services, their adult services, their fire and rescue services, etc., etc. That information now is in the public domain, and so we are planning from a chief exec perspective around sort of March time, creating some governance in terms of being able to look at exploring each of those proposals and what it would look like for the delivery of all of our services, but definitely our core services.
Are they any good? the other options?
I couldn't.
I'm back to rubbish again. Right, okay. Thank you. Another question I've got is regarding the parish councils. I live at Merriman Fen, and we've not had a quorate parish council for years. It has gone quorate, non-quorate on a regular basis. In fact, it's the only parish council that I've been to that's had this problem. But when I speak to the different parish councils, they are very confused, very concerned about what they'll be expected to do and what powers they may be expected to take on. And the natural thing is that, of course, apart from the clerk, they're unpaid. And they're worried that they may suddenly have a big workload to try and do. So I know it's all pie in the sky. That's a concern. Another concern I've got, well, not a concern, but it's a fact that it's something I've discussed with the parish councils, that the one area that may be an advantage really is planning. Because on planning, it seems that some of the decisions are made by the district council and not the parish council have a say, but it seems to be ignored on many occasions. And basically, they may get more of a say, which is better, but again, of course, how much extra work's required. But also, you mentioned about the fact that there might be these panels that are being formed. If it was a panel that was just literally for the parish councils in the area to discuss planning and they had more say, that might be a positive. But again, what the interesting point with that will be is that we might be then almost organically going back to district councils again. Quite simply the fact that you have these panels will probably expand, and before you know it, you end up with a panel that's got, 5, 6, 7, 10 different parish councils in it, which is basically almost like a district council. So we're almost kind of organically going back to it again. What's your thoughts?
So I think difficult to know until we get the guidance on it. I think it is unlikely that those panels will have any formal constituted powers or duties in terms of decision making. Now, that doesn't mean to say that it's not an opportunity to bring together, local voices, although I would see it as representatives as opposed to every single town and parish council, because it becomes a wedding congregation then, doesn't it, and not a meaningful engagement, to discuss local matters, including things like planning, transport, community safety issues, or all of those sort of issues, but we don't yet know. But I think it's unlikely that they'll have any formal constituted powers. And I think the other thing that in terms of your first point, the engaging with the town and parish councils to date has clearly demonstrated that some are ripe for, we want to have even more things delegated down, we're really strong, we're really functioning really effectively, and then you've got others that are saying, we're struggling to do what we're doing at the moment, we don't wish to take on those duties. So again, I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all. I think it is about an ongoing conversation around what people want to do, and how a new council could support them with their aspirations.
Thank you, Debbie. Councillor Hill.
Briefly, council tax harmonisation, you can actually harmonise down. So, for example, Lincoln could just stand still and everybody catches up. So you don't have to everybody go up. So I think that was mentioned the other day, which I think is a valid point. As an expert on parish councils, I was a parish councillor, I think, 20 years, chairman for 10, and represented 24 of them for a long time now. I think the problem is that people are reluctant to go beyond parish councils, first of all, because they have their declaration of interest, They don't particularly want their neighbours to know what they've got. It's easier for us because we're a bit more remote. And the second thing is they don't make any real decisions. They have big debates on planning, upset half the village one way, and the other village they upset. And of course they have no power whatsoever. They put a note into the district council and they decide anyway. So I think, but if you gave them more genuine power so they could move money around and do stuff, I'm confident you probably get more people who would come forward. But at the moment, all they can do is get a load of flack for stuff which they have no control over, whether it's drains or whatever, and they feel sometimes, well, what's the point? In answer to Councillor Overton's point, well, can't we all join up and work together? I've got 20 years of scars on my back on this, and the only one which ever flew was the Legal Services Joint Service. All the others, there was always an excuse. We tried our best to work with others. I think the biggest scandal is when we negotiated a new IT contract years and years ago after, I think Ed Miliband said, you all got to work together. We said to the districts, join up with us, this one big contract will save loads of money, and they said no, because it was all about keeping themselves to themselves and not joining up. So we've tried for 20 years and sort of protecting the organisation instead of looking after the residents, I'm afraid, was part of it. And I think we've tried and it hasn't worked, so I think we've got to go this way.
Thank you. Anybody else got a question or would like to ask? No? Okay then. Okay, in that case then, well, I move that the board supports the recommendations to the executive. Executive Councillor. As detailed on page 105 of the report, I ask that comments captured by the scrutiny officer be shared with the Executive Councillor for this consideration ahead of this decision in November. Therefore, all those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Excellent, that is passed. Thank you very much. Item 11, Scrutiny Committee Work Programme. The report on pages 493 and 524 provides an overview of the work programmes of all the other scrutiny committees that the board has oversight of. Discussions on details of the particular items are appropriately held at the relevant meeting of the scrutiny committee. Should you wish to comment on any of these, please approach your scrutiny officer following today's meeting. Therefore, the report is for noting. Therefore, I move that the report be received, that any comments be passed on to the scrutiny officer following this meeting. Can I see a raise of hands? Those against? Any abstentions? Excellent. Let's move forward. Item 12, Overview and Scrutiny Management Board Work Programme. The last report in our packs is on pages 525 and 536 and provides an overview of the content of our own work programme. This item is intended for information purposes only, providing relevant details about the board's work programme. I am pleased to confirm that we have no amendments to the published work and programme, and therefore I move that report be received and endorsed. Agreement of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? That now concludes the business of today's meeting. Thank you for your attendance.